across the fence from the shores of Lake Champlain to the Northeast Kingdom to the dome of the State House and all points south, the team at Across the Fence travels around the state to find the people and the stories that shape Vermont. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. As we draw closer to the end of 2017, we're taking a look back at the past year. Joining me as Across the Fence is Rebecca Gollin. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me in, Judy.
Now, as I mentioned, you traveled to all points in Vermont, but this year you had the chance to go a little bit further.
That's right. I had a first this year when we went to the Big E in Springfield, Mass. Now, I am a sucker for a good state fair, and this one was unbelievable with the rides and the food and the Avenue of the States. I'll definitely have to go back when I'm not working sometime. But while we were there, we did get a touch of Vermont and talked to some 4-H members who were getting ready to compete.
We've got some awesome kids here. They have worked their way up through the ranks, through their county shows, their state shows, and the selection committee to be selected to come down to their end goal show for the year. When they start their project in April, most of them have a goal set to come to the Big E, New England 4-H Dairy Show, and excel in the show down here. And we have an awesome set of kids and cattle down here representing the whole state of Vermont.
I have my Asher spring calf here, and she'll show tomorrow in confirmation, and we'll show tomorrow or on Sunday for showmanship. So her name is Bianca. She was born in March. She's an Asher, which is a red and white breed. And she, she got third in her class at the state 4-H show, and she got junior champion at our local county show, so we'll see how she does tomorrow.
How do you work with her or prepare her to get ready to come to a competition like that?
I take her for long walks on days that I don't have much time to work with her. But then the days that I do, then I work on her pretending that she's actually in the show ring and setting her up. And I give her lots of baths and clip her so she's used to everything.
What did it take for you to get here?
Just a lot of work. Just continuous, like every day working. Also, just having a really nice calf that walks really nice, and she's very beautiful, and just continue a lot of work. Also a good support system. I have my sister and my mom who really encourage me and pushes me to go farther in showing.
And unbelievably, the Big E set an attendance record this year with over 1.5 million people over its 17-day run.
Incredible. Now, as most of our viewers know, Across the Fence is part of UVM Extension, and many of the stories reported by you and Keith Silva are about the research and the work done by Extension. Anything from agriculture and land management to water quality and 4-H. How do you keep track of all of it?
Judy, sometimes just keeping up with what our colleagues are doing is the hardest part of our job. There's so many amazing projects and pilots and trials and workshops going on. We do our best to stay on top of it all. One workshop I covered this past year was about tractor safety for women, and it was really great to see the skills and the confidence of the attendees growing just in the short time I was there.
This one-day tractor safety training is being held at Green Mountain College in Poultney.
In this course, there's an opportunity for people to learn about the tractor, learn where the controls are, what they are, how to operate the tractor, when is it risky to operate a tractor, how to learn how to drive it safely.
Attendees spend the morning learning about tractor safety and then head outside to get up close and personal with some machines. While the class is open to anyone, the training is geared toward women. That's because research and experience have shown that not only do women learn differently than men, they also have to learn different techniques for handling large farm equipment.
I think we're really going through a transition where we'll see more women taking over farms and also making the decisions about what equipment to buy and how to use it.
Green Mountain College farm manager Bay Hammond requires all students who work on the farm to take the course. Some of them are here today, along with a number of beginning farmers.
They're learning how to drive 2 different tractors, a hydrostatic tractor and the Kubota, which is a gear tractor.
Can you step on that all the way down without straining? Okay.
Learning about the basics of what a clutch is and the different gears and the throttle, that's all. It may sound very basic to a lot of listeners to this program, but for people like me, we really need this kind of information.
Carrie Abels and her partner are planning to start a farm together. She came to the workshop to get a jump start on feeling comfortable with this type of equipment.
I have zero experience with tractors and very much wanted to get a basic introduction. My partner, he is very interested in farm machinery and in haying and mowing and learning the ropes of objects like this one. But we believe strongly that each of us should know what the other is doing on our farm. In case something should happen to one of us, the other person should be able to step in.
So we can't talk about UVM without talking about the work that the students there are engaged in. One group of graduate students in CDAE, which is Community Development and Applied Economics, led a high school class to engage in their community in a whole new way.
Alex Hamel and Moses Delane live in Fairfax. They know a lot about their town.
We know that a fifth of the population of Fairfax is youth, 19 years or younger.
The two are seniors at BFA Fairfax. They've been working on a project this year that will strike a chord with Vermont teens who live in rural communities.
The basic thought is everybody, no, there's nothing to do in Fairfax. The surprising part was the numbers behind that saying, actually, this is how many people agree with you.
Using anecdotal evidence was very powerful for us, and that's where it was a jumping off point, where we keep hearing these ideas of there's nothing to do in Fairfax. And then we were looking at well, why? And that's when we started using census data.
The problem facing rural youth is not germane to Vermont, but of course we know that it's here. So we have many youth who live in rural areas in Vermont and around the world who don't see a really bright future in their own communities. And if they would only realize potential in their own communities, perhaps they would choose not to flee, but they would choose to stay and develop their own entrepreneurial enterprises.
The work is funded by the Vermont Center for International Learning Partnerships and the Casella Foundation. That funding allowed the CDA students to develop the program and work directly with a number of high schools around the state to implement it.
In the first semester, it was really about building the program from the ground up because no one had done this before, and it was
Wei Wang worked with the group from BFA Fairfax. It was a chance for her to use the knowledge she's gained to transfer hands-on skills to the high school students and their teachers.
They were understanding and trying to learn the concepts that I learned maybe in college, maybe even in graduate school. So they're operating at a very high level.
The hope is that this pilot program will spread in Vermont and beyond and bring more opportunities for high school students to engage in their communities.
That's not the only story I worked on with CDA students this year. The next one seemed like an idea that could have a lot of potential here in Vermont. It was a trial project, and it paired farmers and convenience stores around the state to sell boxes of farm fresh produce.
Every Friday I send the store a list of what's going to be in the share for the next week's pickup, and they advertise it for that week and take the sales, and then they let us know how many boxes have been ordered.
Easy process. You prepay for the box, we take your information, and then on Friday, you come in once it's delivered, pick up any time on Friday and swipe your gift card and go.
For farmers, the chance to get more of their produce onto their neighbors' plates is appealing.
Many of these farmers, one of their greatest heart wishes is to feed people around them. And it's their neighbors. It's not actually going 20, 30 miles away, it's going 4 miles away.
That's the whole reason I started farming. I was looking to not only grow the food for myself in a way that I felt good about, but be able to provide that to the community as well.
Back at the Jolly, the food boxes are being delivered. The customers who ordered them will pick them up during the day.
Not everybody has time to go to the farm and be a part of the CSA.
Store manager Mike Trackham hopes that making it easier and more convenient for his customers to get fresh local produce will benefit the whole community. He knows the option will make it a little easier for at least one family he knows well, his own.
I got a family of 4, and for me to stop at a grocery store every day and to buy, veggies that are either going to go bad or, produce that's going to go bad, it's just not worth it half the time. Or if you pick up 1 box, it'll feed you for the weekend.
And the plan with that program is to expand next year to more stores and farms around the state.
Now, one topic that's been big this year, of course, is water quality. And you had a recent story that dealt with water quality, but in a very different way that some people might think.
Yeah, Judy, this story had a really big impact on me. Like you said, we hear a lot about water quality on the lake, but it wasn't until last year, talking to Lake Champlain Sea Grant specialist Chris Stepanuk, that I first heard about microplastics. Now that I've done this story, I know that it's a pretty significant issue.
There's a mystery in Lake Champlain.
Is it a film? Is it a bead? Is it a fiber, fragment, foam?
It is tiny pieces of plastic that researchers started noticing in the early 2000s, first in ocean waters and later in the Great Lakes and Lake Champlain.
These particles are less than 5 millimeters in size.
That's smaller than a pencil eraser.
The first project, and probably the longest running, was the wastewater treatment plant processing. So
Danielle Garneau is a professor of environmental science at SUNY Plattsburgh. She's leading a study investigating the distribution of the plastic particles, or microplastics, around the lake, both in the water and also in the animals who live here. Another piece of the puzzle is determining exactly what kind of plastic each tiny particle came from in the first place.
There's so many thousands of kinds of plastics that are out there, different polymers, different types of plastics.
Yeah, so the meander is really that S shape that rivers are going to create.
Chris Stepanuk is a professor and researcher at the University of Vermont. She's part of the Lake Champlain Sea Grant, which is funding Garneau's research on microplastics.
What Danielle is finding is that the dominant kind of plastics or microplastics in the lake are fibers. So those are coming from textiles, maybe like our fleece jackets, or from ropes or other plastic materials that are used in the lake or fishing or something like that. And then we also know that she's looking at wastewater treatment plant outfalls, and that these microplastics are making their way through the wastewater treatment plants and out into the lake.
Even though when we look at our sieve, when we pull it, it doesn't seem like a lot. You can imagine when we, extrapolate out to based on flow rates and thinking about other plants that would be contributing as well. This may become a larger problem in the lake.
As I said in the story, the research on microplastics is a partnership between the Lake Champlain Sea Grant and SUNY Plattsburgh. This is one that we'll be keeping an eye on, and definitely we'll be bringing you more stories in the future.
Well, now that it's officially winter, you have another story that's seasonally appropriate.
That's right, Judy. I remember hearing about Snowflake Bentley when I was a student at UVM and thinking, this was a guy that was just innovative and ahead of his time in a way that so many Vermonters are. For this story, I talked to a relative of Bentley's and went to the house in Jericho where he lived.
Once he saw just the delicate beauty, it captured his attention. It just captivated him. He spent 2 years trying to draw the snowflakes, the designs that he saw, holding his breath so they wouldn't melt, and then got this idea somewhere from a magazine or something. He saw an article about this camera with a microscope attached and thought, if I had that, I could photograph the snowflakes, not just try to draw them.
Bentley spent the next 2 years figuring out how to capture the image of a snow crystal through the microscope. The process involved a number of challenges that called for creative solutions, including rigging up a pulley system when he couldn't reach the front of the camera to focus.
He had to work in the cold because otherwise the snow crystals would melt so quickly. He worked in an unheated woodshed. He wore heavy mittens so that his warmth from his hands wouldn't warm the microscope slide.
Along with the intricate process he came up with for photographing the crystals, Bentley also kept very detailed records of the weather and conditions during each storm.
He was able to start figuring out science-wise what might be happening to snow crystals.
Mark Breen is a meteorologist at the Fairbanks Museum in St. Johnsbury. A number of the tools and language Bentley developed to describe what he saw are still used in the scientific community today. And many of his theories about why different storms produce different shaped flakes have been proven true.
So the Snowflake Bentley exhibit at the Jericho Historical Society is open year-round, and you can check their website for their winter hours. And Judy, I know we're just about out of time, so I just want to thank you for having me in. It's so great to be here in the studio, as much fun as it is to get out in the field with you as we get to do occasionally. So
yeah,
thank
well,
you.
I've really enjoyed your work. It's really interesting, and it's always great to see you in person as well. Thanks a lot. Well, that's our program for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.